Hello, and Science and Sport Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Solomon, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Emma Reid. So Emma is a professional judo athlete for TeamGB. She recently competed at the Olympics. So we're here today to discuss how she prepared for Paris 2024. So without further ado, it's time to welcome her onto the show. Emma, welcome to the Science and Sport Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us. So can you give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you've been up to until now?
Yeah, so obviously my name's Emma Reid and I am a full-time judo athlete working out of Walsall-based judo centre and just come back from the Olympics in Paris.
Excellent. How was that? We're going to touch on all that stuff later, but how was that for you?
Yeah, it was an experience. Like, it was my first game, so kind of going in, not knowing what to expect, getting a bit of knowledge from other players and everything. But it was an amazing experience, yeah, like to actually get to where you want to be. The result not quite how I wanted, but still an amazing time, yeah.
Excellent. And I imagine you've still got a few more games in you to go to in Los Angeles and Brisbane.
I hope so. No, like maybe I'm trying to take it like a year at a time. Obviously a 4-year cycle, but like mentally it's hard to say 4 years, especially when you just come back from Olympics. So yeah, like a year at a time is a lot more manageable. But yeah, hopefully get into LA.
Fingers crossed. So obviously we're here to discuss your experiences there and how you prepared for it. But before we get into that, it's important to touch on what judo is and what that involves, right? Because there's going to be some people who are like, it's throwing people around a little bit. But can you talk us through what actually happens? So what does the sport involve and what kind of physical attributes do you need?
Yeah, so it's come from Japan, it originated, and it translates to the gentle way, which is quite ironic because it doesn't feel very gentle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a combat sport, martial art, and there's 3 ways you can win. So you can throw someone on the back, hold them down in the ground, or submission, so arm lock or strangle. So they're the like key ways to win. And yeah, it's I do find people don't really understand it. Like sometimes I don't. I'm like, why is that a score or something like that? But yeah, people watching it's quite technical. So you kind of need to have an idea of it to watch. But it's still highly entertaining to watch, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, I watched some the Olympics, and I mean I've watched a little bit before, but not loads. And I was kind of like, there's not a lot happening. There's not a lot happening. And someone gets thrown around. I'm like, that looks like it's a good thing, but it's not a good thing.
And the only thing I can relate it to, like I was watching Taekwondo, and I don't really understand it, and I was like, oh, this is what people feel like when they're watching judo, because I was like, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it's very high paced. I think like it may seem like nothing's going on, but the whole gripping strategies and like trying to throw, move them around, it's kind of like grappling, wrestling mixed with technique to like throw them, and then yeah, a bit of association with BJJ, I guess, on the ground and stuff. So it's a bit of a mixture, yeah.
And what do you need to be good at it, like physically? Because like you can see, I think about the men's heavyweight class is kind of obvious, right? Like the biggest guy in the world is there and he wins. But what does an athlete then need? Is it strength? Is it power? Is it speed? What's going on there?
I think it varies. Like, so the guy you mentioned, Teddy Riner, he actually found a peak weight that he wanted to be because it's over hundreds. I think someone said it was like 134 kilos. So he keeps around that. So it's not like he just lets himself go. And he's still, even in the open category, like working towards a peak performance type thing. And then obviously the different weight categories, it varies. Like me, I'm an under 78 kilo player compared to an under 48 kilo girl. Like our things are going to be so much different. I might have more power and strength and they'll be a lot quicker type thing. So it's quite individual, but for me I find working on strength is hugely important, but also that explosiveness. So doing the randori, what we call practicing judo, is where you kind of do that, but then also obviously in the gym is where you fine tune those explosive moves and power.
And when you mentioned like the technical training, obviously like judo's is 4 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're drawing, and then it just goes on for seemingly forever.
Yeah.
Like talk us through what kind of conditioning is necessary there, because 4 minutes is like, it's not fast, but you're not talking about a marathon there, but also you are talking about throwing people around as quickly as possible. So how does that work in terms of conditioning?
Yeah, like 4 minutes, like you say, doesn't feel long, but like sometimes you look at the clock and it's been 2 minutes, you're like, oh my God, I'm burnt out here. Like, so it's kind of conditioning is a mixture of like muscle endurance to kind of obviously compete at that level for that time. But we kind of do a vary of high intensity ones, like we call it the mat based conditioning, where you're basically replicating a fight, but also you're doing kind of more endurancey, steady pace one. You want to build up your aerobic base as well. So you're kind of getting the mixture of everything rather than just full blast the whole time.
Yeah, I can imagine that leads to some pretty tired and grumpy athletes if you're doing that.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at your preparation, then obviously you've gone through a long period to get to the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of training did you do to get there? Because it's not just like you rocked up and you're like, oh, I fancy a good judo. We'll have a bash at that.
Yeah. So since being full time in Walsall, which was in 2017, I've kind of gone through like a roller coaster of different programs and stuff, because it just depends on where you're at and where you are in the cycle and stuff like this. So at one point I was quite light for my weight group, so my S&C coach put me on like a hypertrophy block, and that was good. It built mass, it built everything, but I felt kind of sluggish and slow on the mat. So it's kind of then, right, I've got the muscle, I've got bigger. Now I need to learn how to use the muscles that I've just gained. So yeah, it's a long process. And then leading up to competitions and especially the Olympics, it's all about kind of getting that fast power movements rather than the slogging of the like high rep maxes and stuff like that. So yeah, it kind of changes throughout where you are.
So that's adjusted based on the periodization plan, the plan behind what you need at the time.
Yeah.
Um, what did it look like just before the Olympics? Then, because you mentioned obviously power. Like
Yeah.
what does a session look like when you're trying to improve your power?
So just before I did like a very short, sharp kind of power session, but just say like the week or two before in the gym, the like weight session, it's more kind of reps of 3, not 5, more not doing lifts that kind of stick, like where you're pushing, you're trying to grind them out, more ones that you just feel good with, that you're going to just push out, and just not spending as much time in the gym. Really, you don't really need to leading up, you don't want to have your muscles tired. Like the main thing is at that point the judo. So yeah, and then the last session I did before the games was like an enom kind of session where it's like 20 seconds just blasting an exercise like clean, ski erg, battle rope, something like that, and then resting. So I build up my power again for the next exercise. So it was kind of very short, sharp. I think it took like 20 minutes. Like didn't take long at all. So yeah.
It's I like the way that it changes through time, right? So you're hitting your goals. You can't gain any muscle in one session just before
Yeah.
the Olympics, right? You're not looking to be bigger or stronger. It's like, right, now it's time to just perform and do the sport itself.
Yeah.
Obviously you can't do all of those things without testing as well, right? So what kind of testing goes on for a judo athlete? Because obviously, you mentioned hypertrophy, for example. So there was identified a need for more muscle. You gain some muscle. What other kind of tests are going on there to make sure that you're in tip-top performance condition?
Yeah, so we do periodically we do like monitoring testing. So that involves aspects of physio, so like mobility. Judo players are known to be a bit stiff, so they keep that in check to like avoid injuries and stuff. And then there's like the general strength testing, like not just how much you can clean or anything, but like we'll have our arm at like 90 degrees, and it's how hard you can pull the, I don't even know what it's called, I'm not very good at them, the like diameter, the thing that records how hard you can pull the machine.
Yeah.
So like that's
That dynamometer.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
and then another one is like the capacity testing. So for example, how many calf raises you can do to a metronome type thing, and those sort of things. It's not necessarily like we want you to get a certain amount. It's more individual and kind of balance based. So like if you can do 15 on your left and 25 on your right, there's an imbalance there. So they'll kind of adapt your strength and conditioning based on these monitoring testings to help prevent injury and to correct like any weaknesses you might have and stuff like that. And then obviously the next time, it's not a test to see how much you've gotten better. It's like just to keep on track of these things. Yeah.
Excellent. And like when you're going through that process, obviously you're going to get some potentially, especially with judo, get some injuries along the way. So how do you deal with injuries and setbacks? Because ultimately, yeah, you want to minimize that to try and get to the Olympics. But I mean, yeah, you're getting thrown around all the time. Maybe a finger gets broken or a toe or something. Those things can happen fairly easily, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with judo, it's like you can just have a freak accident one day. Someone does some funny move on you that you like the coaches always say, be careful, and you're like, I can't really be careful when I'm trying to throw someone around type thing. So but yeah, the things they put in place to minimize them is really good. Like we do prehab before randori sessions to get our body activated. We've got a good like physio program, so obviously when we are injured, rehabbing back properly to get back on the mat, so it's not like a recurring injury. And yeah, I think you've got to take a bit of initiative yourself. Like if you've got a bit of a niggle or something, you just don't ignore it and go through. Yeah, like a lot of people kind of hide maybe their injuries because they want to carry on training and everything. You just got to be sensible, like especially when it's a 4-year cycle or some people 12 years of their like life, then you can't be silly with that sort of thing.
Yeah, especially when it's your bread on the table, right? Like if that's how you're earning your money, then yeah, it's very difficult to. Sometimes it's difficult for athletes to say, yeah, I do have pain, but
Yeah.
super important if you want to do that long term to acknowledge it and get it sorted instead.
Yeah, especially when what you love doing is judo and you go to the physio room and they're like, yeah, we're going to take you off the mat for a bit as it eases off. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
So it stops people like being honest. But I've learned like you just got to listen to your body and listen to the physios really.
And how do you deal with that mentally? Because obviously, yeah, you just mentioned it's the thing you love doing and you get told you can't do it. So how do you then deal with that situation of being stuck on the sidelines?
Yeah, like I, touch wood, have only had one serious injury where I had an elbow operation and I was out for like 5 months. But I was lucky to have like my coach was even I still think had the bandage on from the operation. He was like, we'll do footwork stuff, we'll still get you on the mat and stuff. And it's like mentally like I still went on and did a session. And like just filling your time with other stuff that you might not have been able to do before. Like I'm going to sound like a grandma now, but I like my baking and my cross stitch and like little things like that. So it's kind of like filling your time where you might be doing training with things that just make you happy, I guess.
You would not believe the amount of athletes that I see doing like stitching stuff from like you thought
Yeah.
it was from the 1800s that your grandma does it, and I'm looking around the training center, I'm like,
What?
yeah, they are doing that. That's going on right now.
Like when Tom Daly did it, I was like, oh, it's not the only one. I'm not the
Yeah.
only
And I'm rudely interrupting to make sure you're up to date and aware of the Science Sport Coach Academy. So the Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses which are broken down in bite-sized chunks. So if you're enjoying today's podcast and you want to get your hands on some more great sports science information, all you have to do is hit the link in the show notes and you can get in there completely for free in the next 7 days. So hit that link in just a few moments' time.
And in terms of like preparing for competition, obviously you get to the Olympics, it's your first time there. What do you see and experience there? Because I imagine for most people it's the highlight of their career. They're going there and like they just get blasted by a ton of things and like everything is there, cameras in your face, people everywhere. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I think you get pre-warned about a lot of stuff, like it's going to be overwhelming, it's going to be a lot type thing. But at the end of the day, when you pull apart all of that stuff, it's still the same mat, the same girls really that you've been fighting for the last 4 years. And it's trying to find a way of like pulling all of that back so it is just that and you're not overwhelmed when you actually get onto the mat. But that is the difficult part because you are getting stuff thrown in your face like media that you wouldn't maybe normally have, or all this exciting stuff that you want to do, say like in the village, like go to the rings and get a photo and kind of swap pins and all that sort of thing. But you kind of you got to get that balance of enjoying the whole experience, but also you remember you're there for a reason. You've worked hard to get there, so focusing at the right time. But that I found that the hardest to like balance. Yeah.
And what was the preparation like in the village? Because yeah, I've seen photos of being like in the the wooden beds or whatever, they're like cardboard
Yeah.
boxes. But when you're going there to prepare, obviously you've got to do some kind of sparring.
Yeah.
Like what does that look like when you're in the village? Do you go to the Olympic venue, do your training at the venue, and then come back home again? How does that look?
So we were really lucky because TeamGB are just amazing with what they put on for us. So they actually got a secondary school and transformed it into like the performance lodge. So you could leave the village 20-minute like minibus journey there, and we had all the mats. We had our own gym. There is a gym in the village, but like there's 10,000 people there that you're going to struggle to get your session done. So it was a great space to just go do your own training and then being away from like the village, and it's just TeamGB there. So that was good. And we brought our own partners out. So people came out just for training partners for the people fighting. So we could do our little bits just before. Yeah.
I can imagine it makes a big difference, right? So you've got like mini GB in your little place by yourself, but also, the having your own training partners there makes a big difference as well, right? Like just people who can support you, you know how they play, you know that they're not going to destroy you deliberately like 2 days before your big event. Like super important stuff compared to, I don't know what the alternative might have been, but like sparring with someone who you actually might have to compete against in a few days' time.
Yeah, and I guess because there was 5 of us girls, and you're only one per weight group, so it goes 52 up to me 78. So it's like if we didn't have training partners and we had to fight each other, I couldn't have a good practice with a 52 kilo player. And you feel like with the training partners, you can be a bit selfish. You could be like, I'm competing, so this session's for me in a certain way and stuff. But I was lucky to have one of my close friends as my training partner. So she was funny. She was like, "Oh, can I get you a water? Can I get you a drink?" I'm like, stop doing that. To be that much.
Yeah. And what were the biggest lessons you took from all your experiences there? Because obviously, hopefully it's not a once in a lifetime experience. Hopefully you can do that a number more times. But what are the lessons that you took from it as an athlete?
I think the main thing which I struggled with was getting the balance right. Like, and I think it was a shame just because I fought on the Thursday and we were traveling home on the Friday, so it was kind of like it was all leading up to the competition, and I didn't get that after bit to go watch maybe like other sports and stuff like that. So I think what I learned was mainly like to enjoy the whole experience a bit more, and maybe obviously there's some things that out of my control. I could have maybe stayed out longer if I thought about it more, but you don't know with your first games what you're going to want and stuff. So I think just going in and enjoying the whole, like you've worked so hard to get there, like enjoy the experience and kind of still have that focus on the competition. I think that's the main thing, because if I'd got a gold medal, then like the whole thing would have been amazing. It would be quite easy to look back and go, oh, that was the best time of life. But when the result doesn't go your way, it's then looking back and going, but I still had an amazing time, like doing all this stuff. So I think that's the important bit, doing the bit that you enjoy and making experience without it affecting your performance.
I think that's some excellent advice for all the athletes listening, like not just people who are going to go to the Olympics, but to actually enjoy what you're doing as opposed to making it feel like work every day, make it feel really difficult. Like when you get the chance to, I don't know, play in the Champions League or be at an international tournament, that you actually enjoy it as opposed to just go through the motions, and you sit there like, well, actually, you look back at it in 60 years time, you're like, oh yeah, like if only I'd have done A, B, and C.
Yeah. But I worked 4 years for that. What?
yeah, 2 or 3 days. Oh, shoot. Excellent. So, Emma, massive thanks for your time and effort today. It's been a pleasure talking. Where can people find a little bit more about you?
So I've got my Instagram, Emma Claire Reid. Claire without an I, Reid with an I after the E.
Right, yeah.
Instagram, I mainly put my stuff of my training and what I'm up to. So if anyone wants to follow the journey, then it's all there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So it's been a pleasure talking, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks to Emma for all of her hard work on today's podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you do at home too. Before you leave, I want to point you in the direction of the Science and Sport Coach Academy. The Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses which are broken down into bite-sized chunks. So if you enjoyed today's podcast and you want to get your hands on some more great sports science information, what you have to do is hit the link in the show notes and you get in there completely for free in the next 7 days. What's more, every time you complete one of the courses, you'll get a certificate of completion which will prove your ongoing education. And if you have enjoyed today's podcast, it'd be fantastic if you could recommend it to a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. That means that we can keep bringing the best possible guests and the best possible content. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks from me. I'm Matt Solomon of Science and Sport, and I'll speak to you next week.